Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell.
All right, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic, and with us tonight, Joseph James. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Pleasure, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're glad to have a chance to talk to you. You have got such a varied background in music. I don't think there's much of a role that you haven't done. Singer, songwriter, musician. You've got the studio. You've done A&R work. So, yeah, a lot of bases to cover here. But as we often say on this show, every musician's journey starts somewhere. Where was that somewhere for you?
Oh, I think my first gig, my two first gig were at a Chinese restaurant, the Imperial Walk in Hicksville, Long Island. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure which one came first. My father got me a gig as well at next to his printing shop on Canal Street, and it was a mafia joint. And basically, I would play the same 7 songs because that's all I knew. I think at 15 years old, and the owner of the place before the first gig said, "Kid, if you see something, you didn't see it." If you hear something, and I'm like, "I didn't hear it." And he's like, "See, you're not that dumb." I said, "Okay." And I heard some stuff, man. It was cool. So between those 2 gigs, I should have just figured it all out, and I did. And I just said, "All right, well, I love it. Let's keep doing it for some crazy reason."
Yeah.
So, mafia and Chinese.
Well, they go hand in hand.
Actually, they are my 2 favorite foods, so I think that's why I stuck it out.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now tell me this. I'd read that you actually started out at the Albany Business School
I did.
before committing to music full time.
I did. Yeah. I went to SUNY Albany with the intentions of going the whole 4 years and just doing what the roller coaster ride was pre-planned to do. And after about a year and a half, 2 years, I had frequented Berkeley a few times, and I was still doing gigs here and there. And there was an open audition one day at Berkeley, and I walked in, and it went very well, actually. Probably because the teachers were tired that day, and maybe there was a low enrollment or something. But anyway, I tested out of the first 2 years and earned myself a little bit of scholarship money. And I asked my parents, I said, "Listen, let's be honest. I am not going to sit behind a desk. I mean, unless it's this desk, 10 hours a day making somebody else money. I'd rather do it behind my own desk and make no money." So they allowed me to go. And my father just said, "All right, well, you got one condition." Isn't this from an old school Italian? He's like, "If you kill yourself, I'll kill you." I'm like, "All right." So there you have it. I left Albany Business School and I began my career at Berkeley School of Music in Boston.
Yeah. Now, where did you progress once you get out of school? I'm going to guess you were playing gigs in the meantime, local places, what have you?
Yeah. I mean, I in Berkeley, I hooked up with through a teacher, a wedding band, believe it or not. And it was a great wedding band. I mean, the band was, it's not, I mean, all wedding bands make money and do well, but this band had some great talent. And so we were doing a ton of gigs, making good money. And so that was my bet, which was great. But I always dabbled in writing and whatnot. So I was commuting to when there wasn't a gig, heading to Rhode Island, Connecticut, back to New York, my hometown, and doing gigs at all the places. And but then at one gig, actually we were playing the Long Island Music Festival and my band made the finals. And it was at that gig that Ritchie Blackmore from Deep Purple saw me and recruited me to play in his band. And thus the 2-year Spinal Tap reunion came back to life. So, yeah, but that was a great gig. That was a good gig.
Well, yeah. For you, the divergence of the people that you have worked with, from Al Martino to Lady Gaga to Ritchie Blackmore.
Yeah, it's pretty widespread.
Yeah, I'm going to guess playing with Ritchie was different than playing with Al.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Oh, absolutely. Everybody's different. I mean, the beauty about a great artist is that they're unique upon themselves, and that's fortunately what attracts me to them is that I find all the nuances and everything that makes them who they are, amazing to be with and be around, and certainly influential. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the couple of the memories that have stuck with you from playing with Richie?
The memories that maybe have scarred me. I'm kidding, Richie, Sir Blackmore, Prince of Darkness. Um, well, the one, I mean, there's a lot of great things. I think the one thing that most influenced me was his the way he would dive into whatever song was on the table, whatever was being written or produced. There was never an end date, an end time. It was over when it was deemed perfect, and that taught me like a whole other level of a whole other course level, and I carry that with me today. So I don't think there's ever perfection, but I think there's real close, and that's my opinion. But he taught me perfection in his light, and I'm grateful for that. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, he's cool.
Now, uh, you've also done session work,
Yeah, a
and
lot.
one of the things that, yeah, to me, not being a session player, is you almost have to be a chameleon
Oh,
to
mm.
yeah, to fit in because yeah, to adapt to whatever artist you're working with. They've all got their sound and doing that. How difficult is it, or yeah, is it the challenge of being able to adapt each one that makes it exciting for you?
It's always a challenge. You got to be the shrink. Sometimes, a lot of the time. But you also have to know when to draw the line because you don't want to change the relationship structure. The relationship is really about the music, but to get the best out of an artist, you really have to find the way to weave through all of the nuances of what it takes to get there. And so it wouldn't hurt to take a couple courses in psychology. If read those books. Dr. Oz has got a lot to say. No, I mean, you deal with every aspect. I mean, even myself. I mean, but I always make a point of saying, whatever's going on in a day, just leave it outside. It's just you're here to do what you love to do, and it's good because that's easy for me. I have no problem forgetting to pay bills and scream at somebody down the street for messing up my lunch order. But once I'm in the studio, man, it's cool. This is where I love to be, and I love to be on stage. And I just as long as I'm in and around something that we can all mutually share, I think we hit the mother load.
Yeah. Now,
Mhm.
what's a session that you would say pushed you as a musician to really fit the song that you were recording?
Well, the song I was recording, like what do you mean by that? Like what if was there a particular session kind of
Yeah,
thing?
was there a session or that you were working on where musically it was more challenging than other ones that uh,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, um, when I met Bono, I mean, I was thrown into it, 10 minutes before. I think the song that he asked me to accompany him on, I literally had to go to the bathroom and listen to it and learn it on YouTube. It was like, "You say you want diamonds on a ring of gold," whatever that song was, and promises we made. So but he's like, "I'm doing this political convention. I'm not even gonna try to imitate his accent. I get yelled at for botching accents. I can imitate my own. I can say, "Hey, how you doing?" Um, but it's not that it's difficult because I can hear the chord changes instantly. It's the fact that you're doing it in 5 minutes in front of 1,000 people. That's the stress factor, and you just try to roll with that. Bocelli was the same way. I mean, Bocelli's getting to know Andrea Bocelli was just by chance. I mean, his keyboard player flew to the wrong airport, and I just happened to be there doing sound. And the GM of this place knew me and said, "Listen, Joe can accompany him. And, Andrea Bocelli knows like 4 words of English, hello, goodbye, and whatever else. Um, and all of a sudden, I'm thrown on stage in front of a packed house. Um, and he starts singing "Oh Holy Night" a cappella. And I'm sitting there going, oh, holy, burp. And it turned into a great night. And to this day, there's always, a yearly Merry Christmas kind of thing. Thank you. That was a really great time. And, so I mean, those gigs, every gig is challenging. I guess I like the challenge in some sort of psychotic way because, you have to get through it to get to greatness. So, everyone's got something. I've got something. You've got something. So, but yeah, I mean, those gigs are great. I mean, I think when the style of music changes, to a whole different side, like not many people know this unless they dig around on YouTube, but I love jazz. I appreciate Earl Garner album cover there. As a matter of fact, I transcribed Misty. That was one of the first pieces I transcribed at Berkeley when I started getting really heavy into jazz. And it's here and now that my jazz chops, and in my opinion, are at their all-time high because that's really my shrink as far as I think. And so when I'm not doing the pop rock thing in my studio and all that stuff, I mean, my mornings usually begin early, and I'll sit down and play Bill Evans, Oscar Peterson. I'll transcribe. I mean, Woody Allen said something. He's like, and it's great because I can totally, this one thing about Woody I can relate to. He's like, I can't start my day till I've practiced for 2 hours and get my hands and my musical juices going. I totally agree with that. And Pat Metheny, a buddy of mine, Jim, showed me this video where he said, it takes about that long to get your hands warmed up. And, it's funny at this point in my life, you hear stuff like that and it's just like, I mean, it's crazy, but it's reassuring and groundbreaking at the same time because you never, till somebody else says it, you just think, oh, it must be me, but it's nice to know that other people share those methods. And so little things like that are always little, pats on the back every day. But yeah, so it's when the music changes sometimes drastically. That's obviously a more of a challenge. I always try not to overtalk these things because I see the clock going down. But um, one of the most challenging things for me over the last couple of years was when I started working on classical music with this harpist from the Philharmonic. She lives in Paris and Bulgaria, and we're great friends today. But we started out by me editing her Carnegie Hall concert. She had this big solo, and all of a sudden, I think the microphones must have moved during the performance, and her solo just disappeared. And to me, it was an obvious thing. I said, "Oh, the mics are out of phase. That's all it is." But it's hard to tell a classical musician what's right, because they typically think that they're always right, and they are. But anyway, so on my board, I just reversed the phase, and she's like, "The solo was beautiful. It came back. The room got filled." And since then, I produced 3 albums for her, and we've been nominated. We've been considered. We haven't won anything yet in the Grammys, but I'm happy to at least be there. So, yeah, thought that was challenging.
Yeah.
So,
Well, just out of curiosity, given, say, how divergent the types of music that you've, worked with,
mhm.
growing up, were you eclectic as far as, music choices then?
I mean, not eclectic. I mean, I don't think as far as I remember, I
What
listened
was
to
the first album that you bought?
the first album was that I bought. Oh gosh, I was probably Grease. I loved as a kid. I love today. I still love, if I'm unwinding and I see Grease, I don't know if I'll watch it. I had a crush on Olivia Newton-John, so why not? Um, but I would say the first bunch of albums when I was playing rock and roll were like, Van Halen. I was really into rock. I mean, I had my first concerts were Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, and probably not so much because of the Doors, not so much because I was independently into it, but that's what the group was into. That was
Right.
so you just roll with your friends and go with it. But it was great because obviously, I mean, I love Eddie. Eddie Van Halen's great, and that spurred everything else. My parents always listened to big band music, which I think was a real big help for me because I love horn arrangements and things like that. Um, my father tried to get me to quit music in 11th grade, so he hired a Juilliard teacher who was, it was like that movie Whiplash, except in the classical world. And strangely enough, he and I became great friends. And I was with them for about a year and a half before I went to college. And, that was it. And he explained, listen, you'll find your path if it's meant to be found. And I did. And so that, haha, backfired. I don't know if my father, I probably should have listened to my parents initially. But anyway,
Well, hopefully it wasn't a Terrence Fletcher-esque type tutor that you
no,
had.
no. This was a really nice relationship. I mean, the guy intimidated and scared the crap out of me. But I just, it really took me to places with Gershwin and Beethoven and Mozart, and he opened up all my eyes to Franz Liszt and Schubert, and I was like, wow, I mean, I couldn't dive into it. It would take me weeks and months to get that stuff down, but it opened up a whole other side of my brain that I never knew I would appreciate, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
You
Well, I find it interesting how many rock drummers have been heavily influenced by big band and swing
Right?
drummers.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Buddy
Where,
Rich, I mean, those guys are legendary, and today I appreciate more than ever the talent that goes into what makes up a quartet or in any genre of music. Yeah,
yeah. Well,
it
those
really is.
guys, I was
Yeah.
going to say, not only were those the big drummers, Gene Krupa, yeah, what
Mm,
have you, uh, impeccable stylistic drummers, but they had that persona, that bigger than a life,
totally.
motion behind the drums. And,
Oh, yeah.
you see Dino Deli and Carmine Appice has been on the show a couple of times talking about, about that influence. And it's one of those things to where, when you hear Vanilla Fudge, you don't necessarily think big band swing,
Right.
but when you think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, I could see it. I can hear it.
I hung out with Carmine at a car repair shop in Ramsey, New Jersey. Our cars broke down the same day. And it was really funny. And I'm in a waiting room talking to whoever the rep was that it was assigned to me, and he was on the other side, and he knew that I was into music. Obviously, they all knew Carmine. He's like, man, that's Carmine Appice over there. I'm like, where? And I'm looking at he's like reading some. I think he's like reading Kafka. I mean, he's reading some dark book, and I'm like, awesome. And we hung out. Our cars were fixed like 4 hours earlier. We finished all the coffee and the donuts and everything. We had a blast. It was the coolest experience I had with Carmine. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a diehard car guy too.
Oh, he is. He had this crazy old school Maserati, and I was like, dude, I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact,
Yeah.
the second time he was on, I'd asked a question. Next thing you know, half the show was spent talking about cars. It was like, oh, maybe we should get back to the music.
Yeah. Right.
So,
He's great. He's really fluent. He knows everything about engines. I mean, it's amazing. From at least compared to me. I mean, I might know how to start it, but this guy definitely knows how it ticks. Yeah.
yeah. Well, tell me this. How did you come to move to Nashville?
Oh, great story, actually. So we'll tie in the Al Martino stuff too. So I was working with Al, and that was also a wonderful experience. But and Al invited me to move to his house. He had a pool house in Beverly Hills, and I was really at the point where it was one of the many lulls you stumble upon in music. And so I was really considering. Actually, I made my mind up. I said, okay, well, I'll live in Beverly Hills for a year. I had a small job lined up at Sony Publishing with um, I want to say through Jody Gerson at the time, but I could be wrong about that. But it was like, it was enough to cover whatever miscellaneous bills I needed. I was really just taking off and doing this. And a week before I was going to move, this really talented girl and her family came in from Nashville to visit me. And they said, listen, we're flying in. I was living in Jersey at the time. And they said, we're going to fly into, see you in Edgewater. We want to take you out to lunch and talk to you about a possible project. I'm like, nah. They said, well, it'll be traveling and, whatever. And I really didn't want to do it. And the father just showed up. I mean, he told me he was going to, but I was like, all right. And this was like, my attitude was like, I was actually more annoyed. And I fell in love with this kid. It turned out to be a nice co-writing thing, a band thing. And it started immediately, and they wanted me to be based on the East Coast. That was they were from Boca, Nashville. They had places everywhere. And in the 11th hour, I said to Al, listen, I'll fly to you when we do stuff or whatever. And I stayed in Jersey for another couple of years, and that opened up the Nashville doors, and started working with Jason Aldean and, Jenny Gill, Vince Gill. And I was going to Nashville every week. And then all of a sudden I got a place in Nashville, and then I got a gig at Silver Creek Records on 16th. I mean, it's amazing how things just happen. And I mean, I couldn't have guessed in a million years that would have been the turn of events at that time. And we had a couple good singles, and one of the songs I wrote for Lizzie called "I Love You That Much" charted on country Billboard. And I mean, it was back in the day where you weren't really you didn't have the money or the insight. And with country music, you really have to be organic, because those charts are like church. I mean, you got to earn your keep. And one summer, I was like, I heard the song on the radio. I was just like, wow, and that opened up infinite doors and certainly established my presence in Nashville. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, for you, yeah, you've been playing as a musician, getting into the A&R side. What
Mhm.
was that like for you?
Um, with all due respect, it's not my bag. Um, I honestly did it because I got an office out of it. I was able to help a dear friend of mine who was running a new label, and that meant the world to me. Both parts, even the office. But no, I saw the inner workings probably on a small level of what the major labels do every day, and it turned me off actually. You know, just because you see a lot of these artists come in, and they bring you their hearts, on a CD or whatever, they're on the drop card or whatever, and you have to make a decision about their life and what's going to be next. And you got to follow the parameters of the people that are paying you. Certainly, I don't do that well. I broke away from it, and I often gave my 2 cents, and it's also led to other things. I mean, there was one act which I thought was great, and the entire upper the suits a floor above me passed on her. And I said to him, I said, I think you're great. I said, with all due respect, I don't know why my bosses passed on you. And that led to Dolly Parton. And we did a song with Dolly called Fiddling Around. And now she's playing out with George Strait. And so, I mean, I went against the grain, and nobody, well, they slapped me a little bit on the wrist, because when they figured it out, they all said, gee, I thought we passed on it. And I'm like, oh, I gotta go. So it was a good move. And I didn't do that often, but there was something about this kid that was magical. I mean, she's in all the Hallmark, Lifetime series with Dolly. She co-stars her, and her name is Camille Sanders. And doing a plug because she rightfully deserves it. And congratulations, she just had a baby. And so yeah, no, what it was like, it was part of the ride, But it's definitely, I'm not a corporate desk person. I mean, when I worked for my dad's printing company, he knew. He's like, put him in the back, put him on the late shift, give him some headphones, keep a keyboard nearby, and don't bother him. And it was fine. I could pull repros, and I could, print things out, and I could whatever. And it was just a way to pay the rent.
Yeah. Well, you talk about the suits. I've long held that, with a few exceptions, few
Mhm.
major exceptions, nobody in a suit should make a decision about music.
I agree. And, some of them, but, I agree with you. But it's a business, as a dear friend of mine often tells me, it's since I was a kid, he's like, it's the business of music, the music. And finally you wake up and go, oh, yeah, it is. It is what it is. I mean, we could sit and have a whole conversation about, the business, and then it takes you away from the reality of the passion. So, but
Well,
yeah,
see
I
that.
agree. And I hate suits. I mean, I hate wearing suits. I mean, I do one big corporate New Year's gig a year because it pays crazy money, and I got to wear a tuxedo. But I'm like really stressed the whole week before. I'm like, oh, I gotta wear stupid tux. But I usually throw a few back and let's go hit it. So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's been noted multiple times that the phrase "music business" is an oxymoron. So
oh yeah. Well, is it though? I mean,
it is, but it isn't. It's one
yeah,
of those things.
it's really where we are today. And and I think, not to discredit any artists and stuff, and or challenge their beliefs, because I'm not, because I'm coming from both sides, probably more from the musical side. But you do have to think like a businessman if you want to break through, because that's the reality. I mean, like even now with the single that's out, I spend sometimes hours a day looking at the P&L, and I mean I understand economics. Thank God my parents at 2 years old, there were spreadsheets in my kitchen. Um, Not really, but I was always getting educated about that. But you got to think about the rate of return. There's never going to be a great rate of return in the beginning, if ever. But you do want to say, all right, well, I need to raise the percentage bar if I'm going to keep doing this. And so I think it is beneficial for everyone today. I think if you're going into music, you should have an economics degree, or at least take courses in psychology, economics. That's it. Those two, and then your music. I think it's
Well,
important.
yeah. Say, would people have used that, the oxymoron thing to say, well, here's the thing, you can, mainstream music is a commercial art
Mhm.
to where you've got the artistic integrity to do it right or well or what have
Mhm.
you. I don't know if there's a right, but do it well. But if you want to have any sort of commercial success with it, you've got to know the business side of it and play the game that is the music business. You can
And the
do,
legal side, actually.
yeah, yeah.
You know. Yeah.
Now you can do, the artsy route or whatever you want to, phrase it, but
Sure.
don't expect to make any cash off of it if that's your goal, because it's, that stuff's got a very small market, on
Point of
the
return.
business side goes.
Well, I think it's always good to sharpen your tools I think if you could manage both, like I think the one thing, if you could find a legitimate gig or whatever they call them in the West Coast, a casual or a gig or whatever, if you could find something that lets you practice on the job training, I think that's a win-win. And that's not difficult. You just have to be willing to accept it, because in the end, it's a great thing. And I tell you, I do a daily Friday gig. I mean, whenever we can with my band. And you know something? The clients, I mean, the place is packed every Friday in Dobbs Ferry, New York, and we get to practice originals, 3-part harmony, and we get paid well. They treat us really well there. So in on so many levels, it's kind of nice. I mean, it just reminds you like, hey, this is the one that doesn't suck as much as the others. So, yeah, but listen, it ain't easy. I mean, so, on another interview I did, someone's like, "Do you have any advice for people going into the music business?" I was like, that's because they're listening, the family's listening, the record labels might be listening. Just dive in and figure it out sooner than later if it's for you. Because,
Yeah, and it's different for everybody.
yeah, well, I mean, you got to decide what you want when you get to point B and C. I mean, do you want to live the certain way? Do you want to? How do you want to see? How do you see yourself when? Do you see picket fence? Do you see um, basement level apartments? Do you see used car new? I mean, it's just personal at that point. I mean, it's how do you envision your life going? And
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of notches I have all over my body, but I guess the rewards totally outweigh the climb. So
Right.
we'll still
And
climb.
everything you do, no matter how big or how small,
Mhm.
adds another facet to
Absolutely.
your musical palette. So,
Mhm.
I'm sure there's probably been, quote unquote small gigs that you've done where you garnered something from it that helped you more than a big gig did.
Oh yeah, I mean, I did my first original gig in upstate New York was at a food and wine festival, and it was a tornado outside. I mean, like not really, but it was that kind of day where I'm like, and there was like two people listening to me. I think one was like the food and beverage guy and a cop. And I told the guys, I said, you know something? This is going to be a great gig. I said, because we get to really focus on not dying and really maintaining our musical level of what we did to get here. I said, let's go kick it. And you know something? It was a great gig. I mean, that happens. I mean, I've that's part of the road. I mean, if there's one person or 1,000 people, you should always want to give 1,000%. That's my feeling. If
Yeah.
you can,
Like,
you know, you know,
right. I'll
or
tell you
kill
5
the.
point.
God, sorry, guys.
Go ahead. I stepped on you there.
Not what I would say, or go take the agent out back and give him a whipping. Yeah.
Anyway, I was gonna say 5.5. Your new album,
Yeah.
uh, Valentine,
Mhm.
was extremely successful for you.
Crazy.
Tell us about that
Perfect song.
song.
What's that? Tell us about it. It's just a song I wrote for my girlfriend's birthday, thinking I could maybe not get her a gift that, I was kidding. And and she said, "Well, I love the song." She did love it. She's everything. She really does like it. And but she said, what I really want, and I'm like, oh, shoot. Um, she's like, "I want you to release this as yourself." And I thought that was the craziest thing I ever heard. And so I said, "All right, why not? I'll throw caution at the wind and get in touch with radio." And here we are. I went to number 20 on Billboard. It opened up. I mean, just the other day we signed a huge podcast with iHeart. They're going to be at my release party at the Bitter End on March 25th. It's a Thursday. Bitter End gave me carte blanche in the entire place, and and I'm leaving out all the great stuff as well, and the other additional great stuff that built up to that. But that's how it came to be. It was really, and it was really the first song that I wrote during COVID that got me back into my wheelhouse of being a writer and a player again. Because I just figured, when COVID came, I mean, I like everyone else, we all panicked and worried about stuff as much as we had to our abilities or can handle. But I just figured, well, I think it was capped off by losing my dad, where I said, nothing else matters anymore. Just do whatever makes you happy, because you don't know. The market's tanking by the minute, and you just the Long Island Expressway is empty. You know when that happens.
Mhm.
Nobody's on the LIE going to the city. Like, it's a scene out of a Will Smith movie. I mean, you're waiting for the dogs to come out at night, and just drag you away in chains. Um, but that's what happened, and you know, on an upswing, I guess I found some positivity in all that.
Yeah. Now the songs on 5.5, were they, written during the lockdowns,
Hmm.
or were it something
Yeah.
that, like, you collected
Mo-
over the years?
well, I wrote 30 to 40 songs during COVID, because I went into this manic phase again, which I was familiar with. I was hoping it wouldn't happen, but it's inevitable. And I am now in the process of picking, the 12 to 14 songs that are going to be on the final picks. But one of the songs that I added was a song. I mean, this is the sock in the gut from the business. I had a cut with Kenny Rogers. I have a song called "That's Her Way" that I wrote in my Nashville days, and I mean, I earned this cut. I mean, I literally paid for this cut, to the point where his label and his management company just blew me off on Music Row. And I said, I know he's going to like this. I mean, I knew it was right. I mean, I went to his gigs. And it was at Mohegan Sun. I paid off a security guard to go backstage and said, you know something? Screw this. I said, I got nothing to lose. And I played it for him, and I got back. I got thrown out of the concert after that, but it was worth it. I mean, I literally got thrown out. Like, like the boys came out and like they tossed me out the back door, and I was like, I bought a ticket. It didn't matter. But the security guard said that may happen. He goes, I'm going to look the other way. You just walk in and good luck. And I said, okay. And I mean, he made his money. He didn't care. But Kenny loved the song. And that night on the way back, driving back from Mohegan Sun, I got a call from his manager. He's like, hey, are you the guy that dropped off this stuff like 100 times? I'm like, yeah. He's like, can you send it again? I'm like, so you did throw it out. The inner work, the inner workings of a label. And Kenny took it, and it got cut, and then he died. And that was a son of a gun. So that song is on the record because it is a wonderful country pop song. I pushed it towards a little poppy just because my market really isn't full blown country on this record at all, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's called "That's Her Way." We are in the process of picking the next single. I'll probably send little snips out to everybody in the next couple weeks, but it's a cool record, man. I'm really proud of it, and I'm proud of everybody that's involved, because everyone really came to the table on this record.
Yeah. Now I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about having worked with Lady Gaga. How did you end up working with Stephanie?
Who?
You know her.
Stephanie's cool. Yeah, she reminded me of who I was in the beginning because her perseverance and her drive was second to none that I've ever seen in someone of that age. And I knew she was great right out of the gate. I mean, she and I would close up the studio at the end of the night, and just do shots of gin and stuff like that, and just celebrate because that's her rhythm. So obviously it turned out well, and she's a super talent, and all I could say is that being at the right place at the right time paid off, and making some right decisions. I mean, it was interesting because I was offered to meet Alexa Joel, Billy's daughter at the time, and was still his daughter, and Stephanie, who I've known her family because I was a piano player in a house band at their private club some club that they went to. And I love Billy Joel, Elton, all those guys. I grew up with that, but I didn't think Alexa's record was. I didn't think I could bring enough to the table for her at the time, and I chose Stephanie, and here we are. So it worked out, I guess, well, and it worked out well for Alexa, and I think she's a super talent as well. But yeah, that was just finally a good decision in my life, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah. Now when's the next single? Did you say it's going to come
Radio
out?
was asking for May 1st release date, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a track called "For All You Know," which they were all rockers, big songs. It's going to be "For All You Know." It might be "The One for You," which is another one, and so we'll see. I mean, right now, or it might be more of a poppy Ed Sheeran-y type song called "First 15." Either way, they sound great, and I'm leaving it in the hands of the radio guys because these guys broke the chart for me, and they're sort of pseudo managing me now in a lot of ways. I'm gonna hopefully eventually pick a major manager that works well with me, because it's getting bigger than me in a lot of ways, which is a good thing. But as you can tell, it takes me a couple hours to wake up, even after I'm up for 5 hours, because it's 24/7.
Yeah. Now, are you going to be touring in support of the
Yeah. So,
project?
well, next thing is coming up. We have South by Southwest. We got 3 dates. It's all on josephjamesnyc.com, right on the bottom of your feed here. And so, yeah, there's shows throughout the whole year. Long Island Music Festival was just added. 3 at South by Southwest. A handful of dates with Gino Vanelli, Canadian rocker, which I'm really happy about. And
Super nice guy too. He's been on the show, and
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
uh,
so happy about that because I've never met him, but his agent Rich has said you guys are going to work really well together, and I'm really excited because he's got some really nice venues, and there'll be a first time we're playing 3,000 seaters and whatnot, which is consistently, which is fun. The band's excited. Um, I'm just trying to think. Then I was asked to come back to do a Euro leg sometime in I want to say maybe June, or it's either going to be June or August, but they want me to do like a handful of gigs that, scattered Scotland, Wales, UK. I did a really cool gig in Liverpool at the Jacaranda and the Cavern, the two Beatle places. But the Jacaranda was great, and they were both great, but Jacaranda was more my speed. So I'd like to get back there as well. So those are going to they'll all be on the schedule, josephjamesnyc.com, and then there's everything in between, which is also, there's a couple big shows coming up in Pittsburgh. The Bitter End is going to be the release party, which I'm really happy about, on Thursday, May 25th. And I know I'm leaving dates out, so I apologize to anyone else who's going to say, "Hey, you didn't plug me." I do apologize. And then we'll take it from there. But the nice thing is there are dates. It's kind of cool. People are coming.
exactly.
You know, yeah,
Well, tell
man.
me this, Joseph. Is there anything that we didn't touch on here in our allotted time
Oh,
before
sure.
you got to head out?
I don't want to use up your show. I mean, people, they probably want to come on, get me on here. No, man, Michael, this has been awesome. And man, I love talking to you, man. It's a really easygoing interview. And I appreciate it. And I appreciate you giving me the chance to get my stuff out there. And, but yeah, maybe we could do it again. I'll think of, more exciting things to tell you. We could
All
dish
right.
the gossip.
Well, thank you, and anytime.
Hey, man, brother, have a great weekend. Thanks again for your time.
No problem. All
All right,
right,
take
everybody. On that note, we're going to wrap this one up. Joseph, thanks for being here. Everybody,
Okay.
thanks for watching. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good night, guys.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.